Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another edition of Between Two Members. As always, I have with me my co host, one of three, Mr. Sarosh. Sarosh, how's it going?
Alhamdulillah, going well. How are you doing, Zaib bhai?
Alhamdulillah,
Assalamu alaikum,
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah.
everyone.
Yeah, walaikum assalam, man. Yeah, and then, it's been a while. We've been trying to, manage calendars and, people's availability, but I think it's very important that we had this discussion, and we're going to have a couple of things that we wanted to discuss. I think first of all, none bigger than in terms of recent events, the U.S. and NATO forces pull out of Afghanistan, and the context that we wanted to discuss here is essentially how will it really fare for the minorities living over there, specifically uh, the Shias and Hazaras of Afghanistan. And it's no surprise, it's no secret that they've been the most oppressed communities over the past decade or two or more. um, and it's imperative, it's very important to know, okay, amongst all the hoo-ha of political victories and the showmanship that we're seeing, not just from the new quote unquote government in Afghanistan, but also Pakistan and the US and all of that. It's very important to address amongst all of that the real problems of the people of Afghanistan, including the minorities. Um, so I wanted to dive into it, Sarosh, with you, and then Ali Bhai, when he joins us, can chime in as well.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to start with your reactions, right? Your reactions when you saw the Taliban almost inevitably taking over Afghanistan and coming out with their 75,000 or odd whatever
Hmm.
army that they have, and basically
Hmm.
now if de facto rulers of Afghanistan. I know we've had so many like ifs and buts and cautiousness thrown in the air about this development, but what were your honest
Hmm.
raw opinions and thoughts when you saw that happening?
So my honest, raw opinions, I think, Zaib bhai, you actually had in drawing room experts, you had Faraz
Yeah,
by, and I think
yeah.
you and
Shameless
him,
plug, by
you
the
guys
way.
discussed it very eloquent. Yeah, of course. Like both of you guys, I think you guys did a wonderful job of dissecting. But let me start by saying this: 2 trillion wasted down the toilet.
Absolute
To
down the
me,
toilet,
like,
like.
if you like, yeah, like it's you allegedly had an army of 300,000. That's a huge army. That's not a small army. I mean, for comparison, Pakistan ki jo standing active duty military jo hai, it's about 500,000. So that's only 200,000 more than that.
Exactly.
And uh, and the thing is, I was actually reading last night one of the articles that someone shared on Jerusalem Post, where by one of the former Marines who had served in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and he
Hmm.
mentioned in there that that this I think that they were mentioning in there that August 7th was when they captured their first capital, one of provincial capitals, and within a week, and it's I just want to point out the irony, since India has been supporting and training the Afghan army, that the
Yeah.
Indian Independence Day was the day that Kabul fell
Wow.
to the Taliban,
Poetic, poetic,
and that's
poetic.
it's poetic, yeah. Of course, no knock on our Indian supporters and friends, and no, and definitely a tragedy for the Afghani people, the Afghan
Hmm.
people. Um, I do want to clarify, by the way, it's the Afghan people, not the Afghani people. That's the
Yeah.
currency.
Afghani's
But
roti.
yeah, so yes, sorry about that. Yeah, so the problem that you have is like it's we tend to focus on the last 20 years, right? Like
Yeah.
especially in the West, to us, it's like in America, the thing is, nothing started before. In the words of Ron Swanson, if you ever watch Parks and Rec, the world didn't exist before 1776. Everything else before that was a mistake. So, like, similar mindset, right? Like the U.S., especially in the U.S., nobody knew really what was going on in Afghanistan for the past 3 decades prior. Like everything started on September 11th, in 2001. But in
Yeah.
reality, the Taliban only came into power 5 years before that in
Yeah.
Afghanistan. And before that, for another like 6 years, there was the Afghan Civil War that had happened after the Soviet Union, which had been in occupation of um, Afghanistan from 1977 till 1989 for 10 years.
All right.
And then, all of this, we have to go back further, even another 6 years, to why were the Soviets in there in the first place? And that was because in 1973, the communist-backed militias and the communist government overthrew the Shah of Afghanistan in 1973 and established the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. So we're
Yep.
basically dealing with almost 5 decades of conflict. And the thing is that we need to understand, excuse me, is that Afghanistan unfortunately has been a pawn first between the US and the USSR, and now between United States and China, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it's basically been treated like a proverbial football,
It is.
being kicked
Or a
around.
field, basically, and or a
Yeah,
field to
yeah,
play in, right? So everyone's
yes,
playing their games. Pakistan's playing their games in Afghanistan. India was playing their
exactly,
games in
and
Afghanistan. U.S. and NATO
exactly,
forces, China, and all of that.
exactly. And as a Pakistani American, right, as someone who is a citizen of both Pakistan and of the United States, as people who live in the United States and consider U.S. our home and Pakistan our native country, we must acknowledge that there were bad actors from our countries.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
General Hamid Gul, may he burn in hell. Excuse my language, but may he burn in hell. The the godfather of the Taliban and the quote unquote Afghan Mujahideen.
Yeah,
Like,
and he
and if you
proudly
look
owned
at
it
the
too.
Afghan
It's not
Mujahideen,
even like
oh
controversial. He
yeah,
owned it. He absolutely owned
exactly, and
owned that phrase, and he was proud of it.
exactly, and it's like the chicken's coming home to roost, unfortunately, because elements within the ISI and in the Pakistan army, for some stupid reason, believe that, oh yeah, we can use these uh, religiously fanatic, gun touting, what I can basically say, like the Muslim rednecks in a way, in fighting a war against India and capturing Kashmir.
Yeah.
Like this was the end game. Like unfortunately, that was the thinking, that we're gonna go use these guys to capture Srinagar.
And
And
women Kashmir. Yeah.
yes, and it's like you didn't do that because if anybody's ever seen any of the Frankenstein's monsters movies, you can't control the monster.
You can't. Yeah. And we learned that the hard way,
And
right?
exactly, exactly. It's
So coming back
why,
to
yeah, yeah.
coming back to the current events, right?
Hmm.
From like speaking strictly from a Shia perspective, right? What I've seen over the past few weeks or a couple of weeks, whenever this started, is um, you know uh, a, a war of words, and we'll get to the
mhm,
plurality of the Shia thought as well. After we discuss this, but there's been a war of words
mhm,
between people who are either happy, and that's a very small percentage amongst
mhm,
us, right? So not speaking of
mhm,
the
mhm,
other Muslim groups. Amongst us, there have been people who've been happy with
mhm,
this development,
mhm,
and that, in my opinion, is a very small percentage. Then there's a
mhm,
large percentage of the majority, I would say, is the one who's actually quiet and cautious, and they're like, okay, let's see what
mhm,
happens. Let's see what happens now.
mhm,
And then
mhm,
there's another minority for who are absolutely against it. Um,
mhm,
they're against people who are even not speaking against it, so they're very extreme in their reaction from that
mhm,
perspective.
mhm,
First of
mhm.
all, I mean, not to put you in buckets, where do you fall, or if you feel like there's a fourth bucket where you would put yourself in?
I would probably put myself in the fourth bucket. So,
Okay.
first of all, I just want to go from the get-go. I want to say it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, you're Shia, you're just from a humanitarian point of view, seeing the devastation that the Taliban have caused over the past, several decades, right? From destruction of heritage sites like the Buddha statues in Afghanistan
Yeah.
to the bomb blasts in Pakistan. Like, for instance, we're Shia, we're from Karachi. We know
Right.
2009, the Ashura bombing. Any
Yeah.
Shia who can, say that, oh, the Taliban coming is a good thing is like, hello, they literally want to
Has
murder us.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
exactly, they
like,
have very small, like, short-term memories. They don't
yeah,
clearly remember who we're
exactly,
dealing with here.
exactly. And now at the same time, I am cautious, but to me, what I'm doing more than anything is I'm working within, I have friends who are, one of my really close friends, and again, shameless plug, Maiwan Zaze, and I can send you a link to his page. He's organizing rallies. His father is actually in Afghanistan, raising food for the homeless and for the
Nice.
girls' schools and whatnot. And then, I have other like even within like the Shia Afghan community, friends that are doing that as well. And so basically, supporting them. Like first of all, this is like one of those, the allyship moment. Okay, the people that
Hmm.
are affected are the people of Afghanistan, be they Hazara, be they Uzbek, be they Pashtun, be they Dari speaking, whatever, right? But they are the people that are affected. And first of all, we shouldn't be passing judgment on them that, oh, this is good, this is bad. No, because they're the ones in reality that are facing this crisis, and it is a
Exactly.
crisis. I do want to point that out. So there shouldn't be any, happiness or joy that the Taliban won, because even in the going back to the video with you and Faraz Bhai, the way Faraz Bhai put it, it's not a tactical loss for U.S. or for the Taliban. It's a win-win situation for everybody.
For everyone, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
like, and
yeah, go ahead, finish your thought.
so to me, um, the people that are arguing that the U.S. exited too early, my question would be, when would be the appropriate time? Because obviously, the people of Afghanistan eventually needed to get their country back.
Yeah.
And this is a fight that the people of Afghanistan have to fight. Of course, we as a nation, the United States, is responsible and should have invested actually in the infrastructure. But it clearly goes to show we did not. We were there for war profiteering. And that's
But
what
yeah,
happened.
and Biden kind of admitted that, didn't he? He said that we didn't go there for nation building. We just went there to dismantle Al Qaeda and Taliban, and that was our job. And which pretty much like
Mhm.
drills it down that, oh, okay, if that was your sole purpose, then you clearly failed, thus proving the
Well, I
fact that
mean,
you lost the war.
so let's realistically look at that. Even what he said was not really true, because if you go back to 2000 to October of 2001, right? Go back to the speech of George W. Bush, the infamous speech that he gives to Congress, where he's, warning the Taliban government that, hey, you're hiding Osama bin Laden, you're hiding the Al Qaeda operatives who carried out this terrorist attack against the U.S. We hand them over, we're not going to invade. The Taliban drew a line and said, no, screw you, we're going to protect this guy. That's why the U.S. went in. The objective of the U.S. military was to get It was not to overthrow the Taliban government or to,
Was to get Osama.
whatever else yeah, it was to get Osama bin Laden, which, if you look at it, in May of 2011, that objective was reached.
Yep.
And it happens to be that he was in Pakistan, not in Afghanistan. But that's a whole different argument and
It's not the
discussion.
first
But
time an American got their maps mixed up, so I'm not
mhm,
surprised.
exactly, exactly, and that's the thing, right? That was the goal, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately for the U.S., they were backing corrupt individuals. Like, unfortunately, people like Hamid Karzai, Ashraf Ghani, and others, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, Pakistan has their whole fair share of such individuals too. Unfortunately, the Pakistani military equivalent in Afghanistan is the Taliban.
Yeah.
The only working institution, unfortunately, in Pakistan is the Taliban, whether we like to admit it or not. That's why they get to rule the country, just like in Pakistan. It's the military, because
Establishment. Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, that is the establishment government, right? That is the
Yeah.
shadow government.
Yeah.
There is no, um, real. The politicians cannot be trusted. I mean, I was reading an article, the same article I was reading with that U.S. Marine. In there, like he goes and says that the police, the local police outside of Kabul and stuff, they would arrest poor, some random guy,
Right.
and only because they knew that the family would pay ransom because they weren't getting paid. Like that's, I mean, it's a lawless country. The rules and courts, like they are only there as a क्या कहते हैं, as a hologram. They're not real.
Right. I think another aspect that we also need to address, and those are the nuances, and I think I may
Mhm,
have hinted towards it in my discussion with Mr. Faraz Bhai. But the thing is that we, outside of Afghanistan, we tend to have our opinions, right? We can like, oh no,
mhm,
yeah, this is not a good government. That I don't like this guy. No,
mhm.
remove him, or hopefully he dies, or whatever, right? And that's fair. You could have your opinion sitting outside that, okay, is this government, good for me or my people or the people of that country? But there's another thing. What if the people of that country want that, right? So
That's mhm.
as a democracy loving nation that we live in here, right? Shouldn't that be, one of our, ideals, where we say, okay, you know what, I don't like this, but if that's what they want, then I have to respect it. Because my argument is, no matter how terrifying Taliban are, and
Mhm.
no matter how much people are scared of them and all of that, they still command a lot of support in that country. And that's not a good or bad thing. I'm not saying that's a
So
bad thing or a good thing, but
so
that's,
Zaid, let
I
me
feel
ask.
that's
Yeah,
that's a fact, right? What do you think about that?
yeah. No, let me answer it by this. In 2005, in it's about a few thousand miles west, in the little uh, disputed territory of the Palestinian territory, the people of West Bank and of Gaza
Hmm.
elected Hamas as their
Hamas. Yeah.
democratically elected government.
Yeah.
And then U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, again, representing the leader of the free world, said,
Yeah.
"We do not recognize the Hamas-led government of Palestine." So, you know, in reality, this is all hypocrisy. We don't care about
Exactly.
democracy,
Exactly.
and
Oh
that's
yeah,
that, that's
absolutely.
that's the reality of situations. I mean, you know, and again, the Taliban are a great example of that. From 1979 till 19 in 2001, basically like 21 years, we supported 22 years actually. Sorry, we supported various elements of jihadist warlords, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, here's the thing: like one name that needs to be brought up is Sher Panjir, Ahmed Shah Massoud. He
Yep.
was a Mujahideen. He was the head of the Northern Alliance. He was literally the resistance to the Taliban government. And he warned several months prior that, hey, we have these bunch of Saudi and, Egyptian guys and Jordanian guys in our country who are plotting an attack on the United States.
Hmm.
And, we ignored him. Not only that, we paid the Taliban to take him out. Ahmed Shah Massoud was assassinated 2 days before 9/11.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about a genuine national hero who could have led the resistance and should have been the rightful leader of the Afghan people and a rightful alternative to the Taliban. You got rid of him, and you
So you
supported this
created a
Taliban.
vacuum. Yeah. You created a
Yeah.
vacuum in which a government like uh,
Mhm.
Taliban would basically grow and gain support. But just like
Mhm.
going back to my argument there when I said that if that's what that country wants, wouldn't it be incumbent upon people like us who may not like the outcome to basically respect the the choices of that country. Now, I know a lot of expat Afghans would probably go and say, "Hey, how do you know if that's the choice?" Right? But then
So
my argument to them would be that how do you know if that's not the choice? Right? You're here, like
actually,
there's
to
no
be, I have
the, the
a little bit better argument for that.
yeah,
My and to be honest, and this is going to be harsh, and this is very harsh, and unfortunately, this needs to be said too. And I have Afghan friends, and I've asked them this question too. That look, your August 15th to in 2021, Kabul falls. All of a sudden, you guys are, talking about we need to help Afghanistan. We need to
yeah,
lobby, Congress. We need to lobby the UN to, protect Afghanistan, to help not recognize the Taliban government and to get a coalition force. Let me ask you this. Taliban fell in 2001. Where the hell were you guys for the last 20 years?
exactly,
Like, this is your country. Why did you not go and invest in your country? If you have, and I mean, this is not just for the Afghani people. This is also for the Pakistanis because we are in the same trap. Like, you guys talk about, oh, we don't like Nawaz Sharif, you don't like Zardari. Okay, you now have Imran Khan. Why are you not investing in your country?
right,
Like the fact is, it's easier to sit outside in a comfortable Western country where you get to live in the way you're living and play drawing room politics, right?
exactly,
Armchair politics. That's what we're doing, unfortunately. And it's like, because to be honest with you, none of us actually have stakes on the ground. Like I can sit here and talk all the smack I want about the Taliban government or the failings of the Ghani government or the Karzai government or in Pakistan about Nawaz Sharif and you know the Haqqani network and Jandallah and all
yeah,
these other guys. But in reality, I know for a fact that nobody's gonna bust open through my door and kill me for being a Shia.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think going back to your point where you really rightfully mentioned the so-called moderates of Afghanistan, the
Mhm,
so-called alternatives to Taliban ideology in Afghanistan. Where were they when generally for the last 20 years they had a suitable environment to really grow their school of thought, to really
mhm,
gain the support for their ideology amongst the masses, reach out to them and say, hey, we've lived under the Taliban for so many years. We've seen how that story ends. So let's
mhm,
try something else, right? Going back to like Imran Khan, like you said, right? Imran Khan's main argument when he was trying to come into power was, hey, we've tried these guys.
mhm,
We know how the story ends. So let's try something else, i.e., me. So where were these guys who are so worried about Afghanistan all of a sudden, right
exactly.
now?
And
And
exactly
they
my
had
and
20 years to really grow a generation of
exactly
supporters, which where they didn't. They
exactly
were enjoying themselves outside the
exactly
country, and now we're asking everyone to donate. And I'm like, yes, I get it.
exactly
It's good, but come on. Let's. I mean, you didn't
exactly
invest in your country. What expectation do you have other people investing in your country?
exactly. And I mean, a prime example of that was the 2014 election, the presidential election in Afghanistan, where you had the the peak of immaturity, I would say. Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah refused, both of them refused to back down. You're not even willing to allow the democratic process to exist
Yeah,
because you feel that it's your divine right to rule.
because you're backed with the divine ruler.
Yeah,
i.e.,
and
the United States.
exactly, and that's the thing, right? Like you have infighting within your own coalition. You can't, swallow your pride and let, you know, one of you become the leader. And if to me, leadership isn't about, and I mean, going back to Amir al-Mu'mineen, right? Imam Ali
Yeah,
alayhi salam, like we recognize that Saqifa wasn't right. We recognize that he should have succeeded after, at least after Abu Bakr, or then after Omar in the little shura that happened. But Imam Ali spent 25 years roughly. He realized that look, leadership is we have a fledgling country here.
yeah,
We need to work for the greater good of this country. So if Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah were these so-called great leaders, why didn't they swallow their pride and work for
right.
the Afghan people?
And how do you
Like you don't need to
justify,
have, yeah.
right? And how do you justify, as Afghanistan was falling under the new Taliban regime? We saw all of
You
those videos.
led, you fled,
Exactly. You fled, and then we all saw those pictures and videos of these
and
palaces that they've built
mm,
of a war torn country. And I mean, I was I was gobsmacked. I was like, is this a war torn country? Or what is this? They have like
mhm,
gold teacups. Are you kidding me? In
yeah,
a country where
and
people are living below poverty line and they're dying,
mhm,
they're living in the heats. They have
exactly,
mud shelters. They're like in mud houses.
exactly,
So are you kidding me with the palaces? So I mean, clearly there was something wrong with that government and
of
and that
course,
establishment,
and
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 of course they
exactly,
had to go. And I'm going
yeah,
back to Amir al-Momineen. He, he
yeah,
he himself said that you can have a government of kufr and that's going to last, but you
mhm,
cannot have a government of injustice and expect it to last. And that was just plain
exactly,
outright injustice
exactly,
that the previous governments were
exactly.
doing.
Exactly. And to that point, like for instance, if you want to talk about, a quote unquote just government falling, Imam Hassan. Imam Hassan didn't leave to go to India or to, Rome or wherever. He didn't go to United Arab Emirates like
Yeah,
Ashraf Ghani. Okay?
yeah,
He stayed in Medina. He stood his ground. He's like, fine, you are in charge, but I'm going to be the opposition.
yeah.
So where is that opposition government to the Taliban?
There's
Why are
nobody
you
there.
not stand? Yeah, there isn't. And it's sad because, and then the thing is they tout that, oh, women don't have to put on burqas, and the literally
Oh, don't even
literacy
get me
rate went
started
from,
with that. Yeah, don't even get me
yeah,
started
and
on the women thing.
it's
Come on.
yeah, it's
It's
like,
crocodile
okay,
tears.
that, yeah, it is, because here's the thing. um you went from, okay, so let's look at Afghanistan in the 70s. You regressed to the Stone Ages. You moved up from the Stone Ages to the Bronze Age, and now you're worried that you're going to go back to the Stone Ages. You did this to yourself.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm not talking about the average Afghan. I'm talking about the leadership, the so-called leadership.
They basically invited
Mhm.
this to themselves. I mean, literally as well, not just figuratively. Ashraf Ghani flooding the country is plainly like an invitation that, hey, I mean, come take my
Yeah,
seat. I kept it warm for you
yeah,
guys
and
all these years.
exactly, the it was the irony of it was watching the Taliban in the presidential palace. It was very akin to the 2000s, the January 6th uh, attack on the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it was very similar. I mean, like
Wow, the similarities these people have are
yes,
just mind-boggling sometimes.
it is,
I'm
and
amazed.
the thing to me, like for instance, I don't know if you know a lot of Iranians who are anti-Iranian government, the current government.
Think I know a few.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you talk to them, right, this is one thing you can say with pride and conviction about the Iranian people. For instance, they're like, yes, we don't like the Ayatollah regimes in Iran, but we don't want the U.S. invading.
Oh yeah, they're
Over
very clear
here,
about that. Yeah, they're very clear
yet
about that.
oh, yet over here in Afghanistan, you have, oh, we don't like the Taliban. Oh, please come into our house and get rid of the Taliban. No, it's your fight. You have to stand up for your country. Nobody else can come and set up your country for you.
Exactly, and that shouldn't be the expectation.
Mhm.
Um, just finishing this thought and
Yeah.
going back to our initial discussion on the impact of the minorities.
Mhm.
We've seen the Taliban attend like majalis in the first 10 days of Muharram. We've seen
Mhm.
those pictures. We've seen them peacefully folding the Yausan flags up
Mhm.
from the streets and replacing them with their own flags, which
Mhm.
honestly, in my opinion, nothing could have stopped them if they started burning them, and I wouldn't have been surprised, right? I wouldn't
Mhm.
have been haunted. I'd be like, yeah, that's exactly what I expected. They
Mhm.
didn't have to do the outreach to the Shia community so quickly, literally day two of whenever they took control. Yet they
I
did
mean, it was
that.
Muharram. It was
it
Muharram,
was
so.
it was Muharram, so it was like everything falling into place of like, this is perfect opportunity for us to so I gotta give it to them as far as the optics is concerned, right? That's why I'm one of those people who is actually cautious, and I'm like, I clearly disagree with the ideology of these people. That's there's no two ways about that. I am horrified for people living there because they don't know what holds for them the next day, when all of a sudden these people will be like, you know what, we're bored, we want to play, and let's shoot someone, let's just behead someone, we're bored, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
They're living in that constant fear. But at the same time, I'm looking at them for an opinion, right? It's very easy for us, living in Pakistan or in the United States or wherever, Shias trying to show solidarities to other Muslims and people of faith. Very easy for us to be like, oh, it's very bad for them and I'm going to start. No, I think it's these are times similar to the Black Lives Movement, right? These are times when you have them take leadership. You basically wait for them to do whatever they want to do, and then you
Exactly.
basically present yourself as allies. I want to
Exactly.
present myself as allies to the Shias or minorities of Afghanistan, and I want to see how they're going to lead this. And what I'm reading from them so far is that they're also really like, okay, I don't like this thing, but let's see. They seem to have changed. And then going back to my discussion with Faraz Bhai, I think one of the things that he pointed out very rightfully is that it's not even in Taliban's interests to start another conflict with people within the country. They have bigger gains that they can gain from, like the economic corridors starting from China all the way from Pakistan and going into the East, Middle East and all of that. There's so much potential there in that country. The last thing they need is ideology overcoming the economics of the position, and that's what my hope is. With
So,
when it comes to minorities in Afghanistan, I hope that economics, will really overpower and outweigh the ideology, which is quite dangerous, to be honest. What are your
so,
thoughts?
so one thing that I want to point out, and going back to that point where, maybe the upper leadership, like I think in that video, in drawing room experts, where Faraz Bhai actually pointed out that yes, perhaps for
Yeah,
the upper leadership, the upper echelons,
yeah,
that is that the big picture, right?
yeah,
But then you do have these, like the governor of Herat or the
yeah,
governor of Kandahar.
yeah.
They have no love lost. These are Jahil, warlords,
Ideologues, yeah.
right? Ideologues. And my take on this is sure, yes, let's watch act cautiously. Yes, let the people of Afghanistan lead, but at the same time, like let's not get, that's the problem with us Muslims, especially Shias, that we see, these people you would consider as hypocrites or as enemies of Islam, right? When
Hmm.
they do like a photo op, we become really excited. Like I remember when Obama went to like a masjid,
Yeah,
everybody was super excited. Or you have
or
the
like
White
what's his
House
name,
iftar.
the Prime Minister of Canada. They're
Yeah,
all
yeah,
like gushing over him
exactly,
because he attended like an
exactly,
iftar or whatever. We
exactly.
love
My
optics. We
take,
love optics. Yeah,
we love optics, and it's like being from Karachi, uh, but the Bhai,
the
Altaf
bhai.
Hussain,
Yeah, yeah,
Bhai gives majlises, okay, and he's a student of Reis Amrovi.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you're like, oh wow, see, he's making Imam Hussein references. No, that's not the point. The point is, to me, the Taliban are like the Bani Abbas. Because here's the
So
thing,
previous Taliban were like
Bani,
the Banu Umayya, and we're now seeing
yeah,
Bani Abbas.
yeah, because and if you look at the Bani Abbas, right, what was the whole battle cry of the Bani Abbas? They weren't asking to, install the Abbasid government. They were saying,
No,
we're avenging the blood of the grandson of the Prophet.
yeah,
That's a very Shia move. They were supported by the Hasni Sadat.
yeah,
They were fighting, quote unquote an unjust government, and
Because
they
the
were trying to
optics were great for all of
exactly,
the, yeah, of the people at the time. Yeah, that's a
exactly, and
very
that's what the
interesting. That's a
Taliban.
very interesting parallel you've drawn. That's very interesting. I like it.
Mhm. Yeah, and actually, we even have hadiths from our from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam that say that
So,
the Bani Abbas would go away, and then there will be a time that they will come back, and it will be like, how did they come back? And I mean, if you look at the Taliban in a way, that's what happened. 20,
yeah.
20 years ago, you were like, Taliban are gone. There's no more Taliban. And then they came back, and they came back with such vengeance.
Oh yeah,
And this,
absolutely.
yeah. And so to me, I'm going further back into history, almost, over 1,000 years, almost 1,400 years, where I'm looking at these people. I'm like, here's the thing. To me, when I see them, I'm like, look, it's not like you stopped killing Shias like in 2001. That was the last time you killed Shias. No, you were killing Shias up till like a week ago.
Yeah.
So
Or until yesterday. I mean, for all we know, right?
until yesterday, exactly. Until yesterday, you are ally. Like many of your leadership gave allegiance to Osama bin Laden, to Mullah Omar, to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and all these other people who are murdering Shias. You and the thing is, honestly, I want to give kudos to the Hazara resistance in Afghanistan. That
That's who I'm
they
looking
came
at.
up,
And
yeah,
that's who I'm looking at for leadership at this time. I'm looking at
exactly,
them, and I want to support
because
them, and I want to empower them to really lead the
yeah,
communities over there through this, and not like
exactly,
rely on someone from Iran or Pakistan or
yeah,
Iraq to tell
exactly,
them what to do.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And the thing is, what I love about the Hazara community, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, the Taliban came and they said, you drop your weapons and you accept our government. We're gonna offer you protection. You can continue on with your jalus, you can continue on with your azadari and everything. That's fine. The Hazara said, no, we're gonna fight back. To hell with us not doing Ashura this year. Because to me, that is the ultimate majlis right there. That is the
Yeah.
ultimate azadari, is keeping the
Yep.
mission of Imam Hussain alive. That you do not bow to a
Absolutely.
tyrant. You do not bow to a unjust tyrannical government.
Just so that you can do a
This
few rituals, because that's what it's left,
exactly.
right? It becomes a
Yeah,
ritual at
exactly.
that point.
Exactly. Because that's what it is, right? Like I mean in one of my poems, I said this that, you know, um, and this was written on Eid al-Azha, and you probably have seen it,
Yep.
where in the line I say that, you know, the Muslims are sitting waiting for Islam, but Islam itself has risen and has
Yep.
headed to Karbala.
Yep.
So that's what it is. It's Are we a religion or a people of rituals, or are we a living, breathing religion that upholds a principle 1,400 years later?
And that's a fantastic segue into the second half of our discussion. We also have Ali
Yes.
Bhai on the line. Ali Bhai,
Yes.
can you hear us?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Assalamu alaikum,
can.
Ali
How are you
bhai.
doing?
Alaikum salam, guys. Apologies for being a little late, but was sitting on
No
the
problem.
All
sidelines
You're
good.
listening to your discussion. A lot of great points made. Um,
and you've joined just at the right time as well, because we were trying to segue into the pluralism of Shia
Mhm.
thought, is what something that we wanted to discuss. And let me get us started with that. I mean, the reason why I wanted to have this discussion with you guys, and I've hinted towards that in our WhatsApp, conversations, um,
Mhm.
is that I'm seeing a lot of, and just going back to Afghanistan as well. I mean, the blowout of Afghanistan has been something that inspired me to see that this is not just in the religious discussions. Everything that we disagree on, we have this, uh, we go all the way extreme, right? We hate the other party, we denounce them, we call them names. So and as I see that on Shia Twitter space, on Facebook, whatever, right? I see that and I'm like, is there room for pluralism in our thought, in our ideology? And the reason why I say that is that because it surely there can be an expectation that everyone thinks alike, everyone has the same level of intellect, everyone feels the same. That's impossible. That's nearly impossible if we are to treat ourselves as a legitimate group, a legitimate Islamic ideology, why is it that we are not able to accept and entertain different ideologies and thoughts without calling names? And I keep, going back to the early years when we had a movement referred to as the Akhbari movement, which was also kind of an extreme group that grew up, and there are fractions of it that still exist in Pakistan. At least I know a few. Um, and when I was reading, stuff around that, the ulama at the time, the people who had knowledge, who understood what this movement is and how to counter it, they didn't go, doing tabarra on them from members. They didn't go saying that these are people of hellfire and let's do all, let's all curse them and all of that. What they did was they engaged in debates with these people. And when you present arguments in form of debates and articulate your academic ideas, it's upon the people. Then they know and they have brains to decide for themselves as to what's right and what's wrong. And if some people still reject that, then that's fine. But if some people are able to accept it, then that should be the case, right? So that would be my premise. Ali bhai, why don't you start us off and explain to our listeners and viewers, why do you think that uh, we are lacking pluralism in our society, where views of one another are completely rejected based on if it just goes against my ideology?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So first of all, I just want to add, because I was listening to your Afghanistan conversation. I just want to add one thing there, right?
Sure, sure.
And then I'll come to the pluralism side. Uh, we do. I've been a very strong opponent of the Taliban from the start. I don't know how long, when Imran Khan came out with the whole in 2011, 2012, I've been against. I feel like I was one of the first guys to start calling him Taliban Khan, right?
Hmm.
And so that has existed, right? Because at that point, you have to understand that even in the Taliban, there are multiple movements, right? It's not just a singular group that is coherent and cohesive, and that's how they work, right? They actually have. You have to think of, if you go back in history of Afghanistan, you have to look at it the way just how Arabs work, right? Smaller
Yeah.
tribes, situated in mountainous areas. Communication is not all well. The Talib. So when first of all, they were actually used by the British, so it's not even the Americans who actually utilized it. The ISI from Pakistan did whatever they had to do, right, against the Russians. So it was actually the British who did it, and after that, multiple powers started to come in and uh, use them for their purposes, right? And if you look at them, they're actually the descendants of the Mongolians, who are the Khanates, and now that's why they're called Khan, right? And if you look at the way these Mongols used to live, that's exactly how, even in the 80s, 70s, and prior to that, these tribes were living, right?
All right.
More or less very peaceful, more or less they had the warlord system, right, which existed
Hmm.
in Arabia as well. So to a certain degree, they're very similar to the Arabs, the way they used to live and the way they used to do things, a simple nomadic life, right?
Right. Right.
Now, coming from there, and then the whole, I wouldn't call it the Islamization of the Taliban, or I call it the Salafization, if I said it properly,
If
right? The probably
yeah,
just
yeah.
better word. It's the Salafi movement that, was instigated by Saudis who brought Saudis to power, right?
Right.
Let's go back. And that's why I say context is very important in all of these, right? Who brought Saudis to power? Saudis used to be a clan, Ali Saud, or whatever you want to call them. They used to be a clan who were thugs, basically. They were a tribe that used to, because they didn't have their own resources, they used to go and steal people resources, kill other tribes, and basically, they were
Take
thugs. That's
over.
what they were. They were criminals, right? Or
Yeah.
in Urdu, that you call them daku. That's
Right.
what they were, pretty much, right? So the British saw an opportunity, saying, "Hey, we can actually utilize them. They know how to use weapons. The yada yada yada. Let's give them more forces, and so they can control this area of Saudi Arabia for us. And on top of that, we'll actually use them for notorious purposes, and we can go and conquer the rest of the world. We really don't need to care about the desert of Arabia, right? And
Hmm.
we'll give them a religious ideology that, hey, it's God, it's the prophet, and then it's the king, right? And at times it's everything has to do with the king and the kingdom, right?
Right.
So even that's why, if you look at the Salafi ideology, if you look at Ibn Taymiyyah and all of them, what have they tried to do? They've tried to bring the prophet down, to their level. Oh, he was a human, right?
Yeah.
There are, I don't want to name names, right? There are a lot of Palestinian scholars who actually still follow that in a very reformed way, right? They give you this really nice way of Islam where, oh, the Prophet was like us. He had jealousy feelings, for example, right? I mean, if you guys know a very prominent Sunni scholar, speaks in English, very famous in the Western communities. He has some latest videos. That's exactly what he's talking about. Oh, the Prophet had jealousy feelings. Oh, the Prophet wanted to do this. Oh, it's this. It's like, no, he was not a human, right? Why? Because they considered a prophet became a prophet at 40 years of age. Before that, he was just a normal guy. And after that, he was able to commit sin and all of that. Why? To justify the sins that the Arabs do, to
Yeah.
justify the sins that the kings have done, right? Or the kingdoms
The
have done
so-called
after that. The Bani,
khulafas,
Yeah.
exactly, the Bani
all
Abbas,
the
right?
bunnies.
So
Yes,
that's
yes.
what they do, right? So now when they bring this ideology, right, and ISI is also involved in it, we cannot deny that ISI was not involved, right? You can say whatever you want. The
Hmm.
historic fact is ISI was, training these people, and you bring that into a community where they're already warlords, where you're giving them money, you're taking their young, and you're training them to do what? They're already nomadic. All they know is Allah Rasul, and they're like very Sufi oriented, right? Because a lot of these communities are very Sufi oriented, and you take them and say Islam is in danger, you got to go defend, right?
Yeah.
So now, and you keep building on that, and then the media doesn't help either, right? So now you have a negative image, and now what has happened to Palestine, right? Oh, Israel is amazing in the Western media. Palestine, oh, terrorists, terrorists, terrorists. But every single person from the Western media who goes to Israel or to Palestine realizes what the heck is going on, right? We heard. I thought Hamas was every Palestinian was Hamas, and Hamas controls every single square inch of Palestine. That's not the truth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm just giving you some context to where I'm taking this, and the idea is now when the Taliban takeover came, it came with the Saudi money, it came with the backing of ISI, it came with the backing of America, right, to
Hmm.
push the
Mhm.
Russians away,
This
right?
the Russians
So
over,
This,
yeah, in the
this,
70s. Yeah.
yeah,
right, and
this
then
Saudi and this Deobandi ideology.
exactly, and then when the American supporters pulled back or supposedly pulled back from the front, what happened? Oh, we need a movement. So the Iranian revolution doesn't come over into Pakistan and all these different areas. What do? We keep funding them and turn them into a terrorist organization, right? In a normal
Mhm.
country, any normal country, there are very few people who are, for example, in America, is all of America KKK? No, but a very few,
No.
because they had the power, because they had that mindset that we can go and terrorize everyone. They were terrorizing the rest of America, right? The same as the
Exactly.
Taliban. Was every Afghani a Taliban? No, right? But because there was a small group of people who had the power, who had the weapons, who had the backing of other organizations or countries, they came into power. What happened in Iraq? Was Saddam and the Ba'ath Party the majority in Iraq? No. But for the longest, because they had the power, they had the weapons, they had everything, they were the ones ruling. They were the ruling party. The same thing happened with Taliban, right? Now, what's happening now, right? Because there's so much misinformation, there's so many things that are coming up. As of now, we have seen a side of Taliban that we had not seen before, right? They are actually coming to Majalis. Before, they would actually just, you know, send in a
They
suicide
were
bomber, or
they
they
were
were
coming to
literally
Majalis. Technically, they were still coming, but just in a different form.
it's a different form, different
Hmm.
format, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. They would probably use a rocket launcher, but now they're actually coming in, sitting in there, talking, and all of that. There was a video that was spread out that, oh, look, they're taking down the Alam of Imam Hussein, all of that. There was another video that came out that they're putting that back up. That video
Yeah.
was never shared, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So from everything that is saying, they're sending their envoys to Iran. That has never happened, right? And they're
Never.
asking Iran. If you look at some of these conversations, don't follow the Western media, by the way. Look at some of these conversations that are coming out of Iran on Reddit and Twitter and all of this. They'll actually tell you the content that was discussed. Hey, they're asking, give us your Islamic model, right? We'll do it through the Sunni Islam, but give us Islamic model. That's how we want to run. They haven't done that to Saudi yet. That's why Saudi Arabia is pissed off. The latest attack that happened on the Kabul airport, what was that? If you read some of the earlier reports that actually say with the American troops and people, there's some Taliban who were killed, who were stationed
Yeah.
there from the Taliban government. So who is this other party? So the move that, look, I've been clearly against the current Democratic president, right? I mean, I'm a Bernie guy. Everybody knows that. But the move that he's making, that he's attacking the ISIS sectors within Afghanistan, is amazing, right? And I think that's exactly how it should be. It's not the Taliban. So who are these ISIS factors? They're being pushed off by Saudi because they're like, hey, why are you going and talking to Iran now, right? We don't want
Right.
this peace in the country because we're sitting across the ocean or across the Arabian Sea. And
Hmm.
if we had Afghanistan, we had ISIS, we had these Taliban to go against Iran anytime we wanted, great. Now we're not there anymore, right? So and one thing I'll take from a religious aspect now is because we are seeing all these good things coming out of them. Again, we have to stay sharp. We are not saying, let's just give them the leave in, leave them to be and like they're the best people on the planet. We're not saying
Yeah,
that right now. What we're
absolutely.
saying is, even Allah says that even in the Quran multiple times He has mentioned even to the kafirin, even to the munkars, all of them, right? Munafiqeen. What does He say? He says, "My people," right? He says, "My humans,"
Hmm.
right? He's referring to them in a very nice way. And the Prophet has done that again and again with the Quraysh. You have seen that. Our
Yeah,
Imams have done that, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
our whatever Imams, he says,
Hmm.
come back, right? And if you come back now, we're willing to forgive your sins. Allah will forgive you, right? So what we're saying is we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to do better. Are there
Right.
groups within the Taliban that are trying to do bad? For sure, right? Because as I said in the start, there are factions within Taliban too. But as of now, whoever's in power, I feel like they're trying to do better. So let's give them benefit of the doubt, but keep a very watchful eye. We're not going to let our
Absolutely.
guard down, but we're going
Right.
to keep a watchful eye. And the other thing that, okay, only now
Definitely.
we're worried about Hazaras and all of that. I think we should be funding them. Like, let's start opening universities there. Let's start movements that are saying, hey, 17,000 Afghanis have come. Does anybody have a number? How many of them are Hazaras? I only know of one
Hmm.
Shia family that landed today in New Jersey because I'm in touch with their group, and and that family is also not a full family because the father already passed away, the mother died in the Kabul attacks, so somehow the American army just pulled these kids. Now there are, I think, 6 kids or 5 kids who are in New Jersey, and their families in the East Coast trying to situate them into Shia households. Right?
Right. Right.
It's on my Instagram. You can go and look at that. But do we have a number? So why are we caught so off guard that when something like this happens, that's the only time the Shia of the world wake up and like, oh, Hazara, Hazara, Hazara. Like, why
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
this a big deal 2 years ago, right?